During the fire, Horace abandoned me, pregnant, to save his ex-girlfriend. My belly ached unbearably. I fainted in the blaze. When I woke up, I had become Horace. Horace, bearing my body, looked pale with pain and begged me to switch back. Heaven has a sense of justice. It gave me a chance for revenge. How could I possibly give it back? I held his ex-girlfriend and said coldly, "Ellie, don't go crazy, you're scaring Chloe." Chloe curled up in my arms, eyes full of smugness, but her voice was timid and weak. Wah wah wah. "Horace, I'm so scared. Please kick this crazy woman out. Will you?" Horace's eyes widened, as if he suddenly didn't recognize his ex at all. Chapter 1. When I woke up, I instinctively touched my stomach. Flat. "Where is my baby?" A sweet, cooing voice sounded in my ear. "Horace, wake up. Please don't be hurt. You promised you'd make it up to me, you'd spoil me for the rest of my life." I opened my eyes and saw Chloe's disgusting face. This woman was Horace Jin's ex. While I was pregnant, she got back together with Horace and showed off in front of me. She almost made me miscarry once from anger. "Horace, you're awake. Why is she calling me Horace?" A few of the subordinates hurried over as well. "Mr. Jean, you're awake. How are you feeling?" "Mr. Jean." I sat up. The room's glass reflected my appearance. Short hair, neat and sharp, a handsome, severe face. "I'm Horace Jean?" I thumped my head. "No, I'm Ellie." I looked at myself in the glass. I couldn't believe it, but I had to accept the fact in front of me. I was in Horace's body. But where was Horace? I remembered going to Horace's company to find him and bumping into him and Chloe together. Then he told Chloe to leave first, shut the office door, and had a huge argument with me. After that, the building caught fire. Horace pushed me away and anxiously searched for Chloe. After that, I couldn't remember. Suddenly the ward door was flung open. I saw myself, pale, clutching my belly in pain, burst in. This me grabbed my hand, teeth clenched, and said through gritted teeth, "Ellie, what did you do to me? Give me my body back." In that instant I understood. Horace was in my body. Chapter 2. I looked at Horace in front of me, clutching his big belly, sweating cold from the pain. A thought popped into my head. Did heaven make us swap bodies so he could suffer again what he put me through? Then how could I possibly waste this chance? I wrapped my arms around Chloe and looked at Horace with cold eyes. "Ellie, don't be crazy, you're scaring Chloe. Get out, now." Chloe had been a little embarrassed, but when she heard me say that, she froze for a moment and then hugged me tighter. All sweetness. When she turned to Horace, the pride in her eyes nearly spilled over. "Wah wah wah. Horace, Chloe is scared. Please kick this crazy woman out. Will you?" Horace's eyes widened, as if he didn't recognize Chloe. Of course he wouldn't. The Chloe in his memory was always gentle and pure. And now he had become me. The pair of eyes staring at him, filled with malice, clearly did not match his memories. Horace didn't understand, but he didn't want to doubt the woman in his heart. So he looked at me, frantic. "Ellie, what exactly are you trying to do?" "Doing? Doing what you once did to me." I pretended to scratch my ear and told the subordinates, "She's gone mad. Drag her out." The subordinates hesitated. "Mr. Jean, how dare we lay a hand on the madam?" I petted Chloe's head like a little dog. "Look carefully who the real madam is." The subordinates were quick on the uptake. Realization flashed across their faces. They surged forward and dragged Horace toward the door. "Let go of me, I'm Horace. Let go!" Horace shouted desperately, but everyone assumed he'd lost his mind. They were so afraid he'd disturb me that someone even clamped a hand over his mouth. Before long, someone hurried in. "Mr. Jean, the madam, no. Ellie seems to be bleeding. Oh, looks like she's about to give birth." Chapter 3. I got up and walked out, looking at Horace collapsed on the floor, curled up in pain. All I felt was bitterness. How deeply I had loved him. Even though I was terrified of marriage and of having children, I still agreed to marry him, to give him a child. I once believed he truly loved me. A young CEO with assets in the hundreds of millions took a backgroundless workplace newbie like me seriously. He picked me up from work through wind and rain, cooked for me himself, and pursued me for half a year. If that wasn't love, What was? On our wedding day, during the toast, one of his old classmates, drunk, looked at me and said, she really does look like her. At the time I thought he meant that I and Horace looked like a married couple. I felt pleased. Now, thinking back, how foolish I had been. During the first year of marriage, Horace treated me well enough that I thought we'd be happy forever. But in the 5th month of my pregnancy, the nightmare began. That day Horace took me to a prenatal checkup. On the way, a phone dropped into a crack between the seats. I reached in to grab it and unexpectedly pulled out a pair of lace underwear. I unfolded that scrap of fabric. The tear marks made by violence left me utterly hopeless. I could almost picture the state of mind of the woman who, triumphant, shoved that filthy thing into the gap and waited for me to find it. She had won, just as she intended. I collapsed. Even 2 months earlier, Horace's attitude toward me had suddenly grown very cold. Back then I thought it was because I was pregnant and couldn't satisfy him, and that was why he had grown distant. Seeing this proved otherwise. Horace snatched the underwear and hurriedly explained, maybe someone else dropped it. I've lent this car to a lot of people. I didn't believe him. I had a huge fight and demanded to know who that woman was. At first he gave perfunctory explanations, but in the end he finally lost patience. Enough. Don't be crazy. In that moment, looking into his eyes, I realized the intense love that had once burned in them was gone. I was so heartbroken I could hardly breathe. Every breath felt like it used up all my strength. I didn't never think about divorce. I did think about it. After that quarrel I stormed out and stayed at a friend's for a few days. Horace called repeatedly but I didn't answer. Later my friend persuaded me, if you leave him, how will you raise the child? Go back. Get over it, as long as the money's there. What does it matter if his heart isn't? Spend freely and be a rich wife, isn't that better? She convinced me. 3 days later Horace came to pick me up. I consoled myself, numbed the pain, and went back. That very night at home I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of them together, the man smiling radiantly, the woman in a white dress leaning on his shoulder, face full of sweetness. I trembled with rage, because the man in the photo was Horace, and the woman looked 80% like me. Not that our features were identical, our facial features weren't similar, but together the overall temperament was almost the same. At a glance, even my friends might mistake her for me. I remembered what his old classmate said at the wedding. She really does look like her. Only then did I understand, I was nothing but that woman's shadow. And that woman had come back. Chapter 4. Mr. Jean. The baby's a bit large. With a natural birth there could be tearing. The mother is asking for a C-section. What do you think? The doctor gave Horace a pitying look and added, the mother can't take the pain anymore. The doctor's words snapped my thoughts back. When I was pregnant I'd eaten a bit too much to comfort myself. So the baby was a little big, but not so big that delivery would be impossible. Horace had never felt this kind of pain before, so he was struggling. He grabbed my hand and weakly gasped, Ellie, I was wrong. Please agree to a C-section. I beg you. I remembered at the start of my pregnancy I'd looked at many cases of women tearing or leaking urine after vaginal birth and wanted a C-section. Back then Horace held me and said, but babies born naturally are healthier. If you really love me, you'd be willing to give birth naturally for a healthy baby, right? I looked at the doctor and said decisively, no C-section. She must give birth naturally. Then I bent down and kissed Horace's forehead. Ellie, since you love me so much, you'll give me a healthy baby, won't you? Horace stared at me in terror, utterly desperate. Chapter 5. Horace wailed in the delivery room for what felt like 2 hours. When I used to watch dramas with him, the pregnant women in them went pale with pain during labor, like dying and coming back. I was terrified. Horace had always dismissed it as overblown. It's not that dramatic. My mom said she was done in an hour. It's just one big push. Don't let those TV shows make you anxious. Not so painful. He was howling as if he were dying. Listening to him, I suddenly felt a chill. If we hadn't swapped bodies, the one writhing in agony in the delivery room would be me. Thank goodness it wasn't. The doctor came out. Mr. Jean, we've evaluated her condition. She's not doing well enough for a natural delivery. I nodded. I want to go in and see. I changed clothes and went into the delivery room. Horace lay on the bed, drenched in sweat, utterly depleted and barely able to cry out in pain. He saw me and whimpered a couple of times. I felt a little pleased and rolled my eyes. It's not that bad, my mom said, one big push and it's over. I don't know why you're being such a drama queen. He looked at me in disbelief, anger welling up. With his last bit of strength he spat. You fucking try giving birth yourself. Then, if I could do it, would I have needed to marry you? I sighed impatiently. Come on, what woman doesn't go through this? I've never seen anyone act as spoiled as you. His eyes widened. See, the things men always say about women. When the shoe's on his own foot, he falls apart. Sure enough, a knife only really hurts when it's stuck into you. I am spoiled? He panted angrily, breath growing more frantic. Tried to retort but couldn't get the words out, and his eyes rolled back as he fainted. Doctor! I urgently called for the doctor and had Horace rushed into the operating room for a C-section. After all, this child was the one I'd carried. I couldn't let anything happen to her. Besides, this body is mine. If there were complications and we switched back later, that would be terrible. Fortunately, there was still time. The surgery was a success and the baby was delivered safely. Both father and daughter were fine. I looked at my little one and couldn't help my eyes going moist. So cute, like a little monkey. Chloe ran in as well. She hadn't left since Horace went into labor. So adorable, she said, rubbing her eyes and looking at me with tears. Horace, if only our baby were still here, we could have had a child. But I can't have children anymore. That tear-streaked, pitiable look, how touching. If I were Horace, I'd be heartbroken beyond repair. But I'm not Horace, I'm Ellie. My heart burned with fury. That time she hadn't only sent me photos. She'd narrated in detail her tempestuous campus love story with Horace. In her story I saw a Horace I'd never seen before, gentle, doting, even a little humble. If I hadn't angrily married someone else, do you think you'd have a chance with him? She'd said. I knew he was sad after he married. Then I saw your photos and I was relieved. Ellie, you're basically another me. I knew he couldn't forget me. So what if you look like me? He'll always love me. Ellie, you'll always be my shadow. How could a shadow ever beat me? I knew she was showing off. I knew she wanted to force me away from Horace. I saw through all her schemes, and still I couldn't stop being furious. That night I was so angry my stomach hurt. I went to the hospital and nearly miscarried. But when Horace saw those messages he said, she's just childish. She means no real harm. It's over. Ellie, I promise I won't see her again. He treated that vicious provocation as mere childishness. Worse, he even felt a little guilty toward her. His words nearly made me faint from anger. When my friends found out they were furious and dragged me to Chloe's company. We exposed her there. Everything went as planned. Chloe was humiliated in front of her coworkers. I felt vindicated. But as I was about to leave, Chloe suddenly collapsed, clutching her abdomen and screaming. At the hospital I learned she'd miscarried. Horace arrived soon after. Chloe clung to him, sobbing uncontrollably. Horace, our baby is gone. I didn't want to trouble you. I wanted to raise the child on my own, but now the baby's gone. Horace, I've lost you, and now even the baby is gone. How am I supposed to live on? Horace was stunned. In that moment I could clearly see tears in his eyes. I hurried to explain. I didn't touch her. She fell by herself. And besides, who knows if that child was even yours? Smack. A heavy slap landed across my face. I looked up dazedly at an enraged Horace. Ellie, I told you I wouldn't look for her again. Why did you have to go and hurt her? Why force her like this? If you hate me, take it out on me. I was strangled by words, unable to offer any defense. In that instant I finally understood, as someone's shadow, I was destined to lose. But times change. Now I was no longer the lamb led to slaughter. I wiped the icy light from my eyes and reached out to brush Chloe's face. Don't cry, Chloe. I'll compensate you properly. Chapter 6. That night Horace woke up and, as soon as he did, was desperate to see the baby. Although he and I were enemies now, the child was still his. Besides, he'd just come back from death's door. The baby was hard won. I wasn't going to keep him from seeing the child. After all, he'd need to help with the feedings. Boy or girl? Girl. A flash of disappointment crossed his eyes. But he weakly nodded. A daughter's fine too. It's still my child. Ha, a daughter's fine. During my pregnancy, Horace's mother prayed every day, saying the gene line had no male heirs for generations and that they absolutely had to produce a boy. Horace didn't outwardly say so, but he'd been influenced. Of course he wanted a son. If the daughter hadn't been born through his own struggle today, he'd probably be unhappy. He patted the baby and then looked up at me, his gaze cold. Ellie, I'm suffering this for you. He still hadn't let go, but I'd never admit that. I suppressed the cold gleam in my eyes and leaned down to gently stroke his head. Ellie, I'm worried about your mental state. If you keep acting like this, I'll have no choice but to send you to a psychiatric hospital. You know our family runs a hospital on the island, remote, lonely, very secluded. No, no, no. He panicked. He knew that as Ellie he was a helpless lamb who couldn't resist. He grabbed my forearm and, gritting his teeth, tried to compose himself. All right, Horace. He suddenly called me Horace, as if he'd figured something out. He wanted to come closer, but because of the cesarean wound he couldn't move much and could only lift his head a little. Horace, I'm going to tell you something. Don't be afraid, he said softly. Actually, I'm you from a parallel world. Because of the fire, my soul suddenly crossed into this world's Ellie. I looked at him like he was an idiot. A few seconds later I shouted toward the door, Manager, go get the psychiatrist and have her do a competency evaluation. No, please don't. Horace hurriedly grabbed me. He sighed and resigned himself. I was lying. I'm Ellie. I'm fine mentally. Good. He finally understood that for now he had to play along. Only by submitting to this identity and letting his body heal could he find a way out later. Otherwise, he'd end up in that psychiatric hospital. A subordinate came in, a little dazed. Mr. Jean, should we? Horace looked at me beseechingly. I savored his panic for a few seconds, then waved him off. Go on, out. All right. The subordinate left, bewildered, and suddenly ran into someone. Ouch. Watch where you're going. I turned and saw Horace's mother. I had called her. She carried a thermos of nourishing soup for the mother. After scolding the subordinate, she hurried in with a smile. Why did you only call me now? I didn't have time to prepare properly. Horace's eyes welled up when he saw his mother. Mom. Oh, what a good child. Where's the baby? Boy or girl? Let me see. When I was pregnant, I refused to have the sex checked. I hadn't told her over the phone either, so she didn't know. She sat on the bedside and reached for the baby. Horace carefully shielded his abdomen and said, a girl. At that, Jean Madame froze and her face darkened. A girl? She withdrew her hand as if repulsed and looked at Horace with disdain. Why is it a girl? What's wrong with a girl? Before I could speak, Horace answered first. What's wrong with a girl? She's the one I suffered to bring into the world. He paused. Though, after all, that was his mother and he didn't want to pick a fight. He glanced at the thermos on the table and softened a little. Mom, is that the soup you brought? Smells good. He reached for it, but Jean Madame snatched the thermos back with a scowl. Then she handed it to me. Horace, there's no need to give her that soup. You drink it. Chapter 7. I looked at the thermos and at Horace's incredulous expression. Mother and son tearing each other apart. Lovely. I took the thermos and asked her, Mom, do you want to see the baby? Jean Madame sneered. What's there to see? Oh right. I promised Mrs. Liu I'd go get my hair done. I'm off. She patted her skirt, grabbed her bag, and walked out without looking back. I glanced at the soup. There was no way I'd actually drink it. I needed it to keep Horace's body healthy. My mom speaks her mind. Don't take it to heart. Drink the soup while it's hot. I set the thermos on the table. I know. He sighed and closed his eyes. Then he opened them again, looking uncomfortable, hesitating. He began, I kind of, Horace. His words were cut off. I turned and saw Chloe poking her head in. Horace and I answered in unison. Chloe? Chloe froze for a moment. Luckily, I'd already told her outside that Ellie had been traumatized and had a psychotic break, so she didn't take it seriously. She ran in and grabbed my arm, acting coquettish. Horace, why did you stay in there so long? I'm hungry. I affectionately tapped her nose. Let's go eat. She smiled sweetly and took my hand. Ready to leave. Wait. Horace couldn't hold it together. He probably really felt bad. He had no energy to pay attention to Chloe. Embarrassed, he said, "Don't go yet. I need to use the bathroom." "So? You two, help me up." Before I could say anything, Chloe exploded. "Ellie, are you okay? You actually expect the two of us to serve you? Who do you think you are? Some kind of exalted princess? Stop pretending to be weak." Horace looked puzzled. He probably couldn't believe words like that were coming from the woman he loved. "I just gave birth." "So what? The woman in the next bed who had a baby today is already walking around." Chloe flew into a fit, stamping her foot, tearful as she accused me. "Horace, she's faking it. She just can't stand us being together. She's playing weak so you'll stay by her. Don't be fooled by this pretentious coquette." Horace was stunned. "Chloe? How could you say that? You've always been so kind," he said. Chloe stomped. "See? Here we go again with the moralizing. Her words are so vicious I can't argue with her." "Horace, don't let her deceive you." I watched Horace slowly crack and couldn't help but find it amusing. "Horace, you've never seen this side of Chloe, have you?" But this was the Chloe I'd had to face day and night these past months. "Your white moonlight is my nightmare." I took a breath and wiped Chloe's tears with my hand. "Don't cry, Chloe. I won't be fooled. Let's go." I led Chloe out. Horace, however, stood there in a daze, unable to form a sound. Chapter 8. To make sure Horace regained his health and to protect the child, I transferred him to the best hospital. I also ordered that no one be allowed to visit him except me. I deliberately mimicked Horace's usual manner and speech so no one would suspect anything. At the same time, I began planning an escape route for myself. Right now Horace is just physically weak and mentally scattered, so he's easy to handle. Once he gets better, things might not be so controllable. What if one day he suddenly returns to his old self? I need to leave myself enough money just in case. Horace still had more than 10 million in cash under his name. I used a few tricks and moved it all out, finally wiring it into a new account. That way, whether things revert or not, I'll have a sum in hand. I'd worked at Horace's company before, so these operations were second nature to me. However, some real estate company shares I can't get my hands on yet. I'll have to figure those out later. After finishing all that and coming home, Chloe was lying on my bed in a white lace nightgown, batting her lashes seductively. Perfect, I'd already prepared a present for her. Before I came back I'd deliberately rinsed my mouth with liquor to make it look like I'd been drinking. "Chloe." I flopped into her arms, putting on the look of a disappointed, defeated man, and began to complain. "What can I do? The company might not be able to continue operating. If my father finds out I've messed the company up, he won't let me inherit the estate." "Chloe, I don't want you to suffer with me." She patted my back and hurriedly asked, "Can you get someone to help?" "Only Yoshino can help now, that executive at that Japanese firm. He's complimented you several times before." "That bastard. I treated him so well, and now he's kicking me while I'm down, saying he'll only negotiate if you go and pour his drinks." Yoshino, she couldn't remember who that was for a moment. A few days ago she'd started at Horace's company, but only in a nominal, idle position. She didn't understand a lot and didn't know many people. After thinking for a bit she said, "It's okay, Horace. Take me. It's just drinking, if it helps you. I'll do it." She probably really thought it was just simple drinking table etiquette and that she'd only have to drink for him. Stupid woman. She's so clever when dealing with me. Why does she get so dumb in front of men? I squeezed out a few tears. "I can't let that happen. I wouldn't bear it if he even glanced at you." "Chloe, how could I hide behind a woman?" She hugged me and even looked a little sweet. "After all, you only have me now. Unlike that Ellie, who only drags you down." Sigh. "Chloe, you're so good to me." "Humph. Aren't you going to make it up to me then?" Crap, the mood was right. I closed my eyes and pretended to fall asleep. What can I do? I can't actually sell myself. Can I? Chapter 9. The company building was burned down. Losses were heavy, and now every project was at a standstill. I was woken up by one phone call after another every morning, although I had worked before the wedding. I'm not the CEO. So many things were beyond me, but even if the company dies, so what? I don't care. I read a few reports every day, then used the excuse of going to see the child and slipped away. Horace's wounds were healing pretty quickly. He could use the bathroom without being helped. But every time I saw him he was ashen-faced. Breast engorgement, hemorrhoids, hives, and all sorts of other problems kept tormenting him without pause. He was on the verge of postpartum depression. It frightened me. I prayed inwardly, either don't switch back, or at least wait until all these illnesses have been cured before switching. When can you be discharged? After nursing the baby, he asked me in a numb voice. Sometime in the next few days. Oh. He lowered his head and seemed lost in thought. Then suddenly asked, "What about Chloe?" I blinked. "Why are you asking about her?" He sighed softly, just wondering if she's okay. Well, he still cares about her. Of course, she was his first love. His goddess. He wouldn't give up on her easily. I asked him coolly, "She treated you so badly and you still care about her?" His voice was very low. "She only did those things because she loves me too much." I paused. Then it all clicked. I finally understood why he always sided with Chloe. In Horace's mind, Chloe's excessive behavior was all for him. She was provoked. So she wasn't really a bad person. She wasn't wrong. What a ridiculous logic. I played dumb. What? She loves you? Oh, I mean, she loves you too much. He caught himself, gathered his thoughts, and said to me, "I've already forgiven her. Don't blame her. Be nicer to her." He forgave Chloe for me. What right did he have to forgive? Horace being nice to Chloe, impossible. Yesterday I took her to see Yoshino. After a few drinks, Yoshino made his demand. He'd help me, but only if Chloe became his girlfriend. I slammed the table and refused. To make the act more convincing, I even got into a fight with Yoshino. He grabbed my throat and nearly killed me. Chloe knelt to protect me and begged Yoshino to let me go, even agreeing to be his girlfriend. After Yoshino left, I swore to Chloe that when I made my comeback I would make him pay. She held me and cried bitterly, shaking, clutching my arm tight. "Horace, you swear you won't abandon me, no matter what happens. You won't leave me." "I swear." "Chloe, I don't believe you." She ground her teeth and stared at me. "Unless you divorce Ellie and marry me right away." I pretended to be troubled. "Chloe, she just gave birth." "I don't care." She went mad and grabbed me hard. "Don't you love me anymore? Horace? Are you unwilling to let her go? Have you fallen for her? I'm doing this for you, trying to please Yoshino. Isn't it enough?" "Of course not, Chloe." I hurried to soothe her. Okay. I'll divorce her. As soon as she's out of the hospital we'll divorce." "Chloe, I promise to make it up to you. I'll keep my word. In the future, her daughter will be raised by you. Okay? That way, we'll have a child together." She nodded wildly and sobbed in my arms. Women in love are so easy to deceive. Luckily she liked Horace enough, and trusted him enough, otherwise I couldn't have succeeded. Chapter 10. Is there anything you want to eat? I'll tell the chef. Horace shook his head numbly. Anything is fine. I glanced at him and walked off. These days, to make sure he recovered my body well, I had actually read up a bit. What pregnant women should eat to recover quickly, what to drink to help lactation. I had memorized it all. I went to the kitchen and told the chef what to prepare for lunch. Usually at this time I would have gone home, but today I suddenly wanted to see my daughter one more time. When I reached the ward door, however, I heard two people talking inside. I froze for a moment. It was Chloe. She had sneaked in. It seemed she was still uneasy, afraid I wouldn't divorce, so she came to feel things out and to rub it in her rival's face. Just from her tone I could picture her expression, so arrogant and triumphant. After having a baby. So what? The person your husband loves most will always be me. Ellie, I told you, you'll never beat me. Horace said helplessly. Chloe, don't be so malicious toward me. You might not believe it, but I really am not Ellie. You're kidding me. Chloe cut him off and laughed. Turns out Horace was right. You really have gone mad. Since you're mad, I'll be blunt. Before, I was deliberately trying to rile you up. Deliberately trying to disgust you. I already knew that. You even admitted it yourself. I had been listening like an audience, quite entertained, when the next second I suddenly heard her say, That time I had a miscarriage. I purposely slammed into the table and made myself lose the baby. I was stunned. She actually said that out loud. I knew some of this, but I was curious how Horace would react when he heard it. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Horace asked in disbelief, "Chloe, you killed your own child?" Chloe still sounded very pleased with herself. So what? The fetus's heartbeat had stopped long ago. In the end, it gave me a little value, not wasted. I was worried about what to do. And then you came along. Haha. Ellie, it's your own stupidity for handing yourself to me. Horace spoke with difficulty. You made up these lies to hurt Ellie on purpose, didn't you? Why would I lie? You've already gone crazy. What do I have to fear? Let me tell you more. That child was actually my ex-husband's. Haha. Isn't that infuriating? But even if you tell Horace, he won't believe you. You're already insane. No one will believe anything you say. How vicious. I digested the information in shock, even though I was living in Horace's body now. A dull ache pricked at my heart. If I were in my original body right now, I'd probably be so angry my wound would burst open. Chloe, how could you be so vicious? Horace's voice trembled, filled with pain. He seemed unable to understand how his goddess, the one he treasured, could look like this. Malicious? Heh, call me whatever you like. In any case, Horace has already agreed to divorce you, and he even said your child will be raised by me. When the time comes, you, Ellie, will quietly disappear from this world. Why? Why did you become like this? Chloe, you weren't like this before. Let go of me. A chaotic struggle broke out. The two of them seemed to be grappling. Insults are one thing, but they mustn't actually hit each other. What if they damaged my body? I hurriedly pushed the door open. Chloe saw me through the glass. In that instant her posture shifted, from pushing Horace to being pushed by him. Ah, there was a dull thud as she pitched backward. The back of her head struck the wall hard. I saw it all clearly, but I acted as if I knew nothing. Chloe. I rushed over and scooped her up. Ah, Horace. It hurts so much. She moaned, collapsing into my arms, playing the fainting, fragile act. I glared at Horace in fury. Ellie, what are you doing? What did she ever do to you to deserve this? Horace still hadn't quite reacted. I didn't push her. Did she fall by herself then? Chloe is such an innocent girl. Would she set you up? Ellie, if you hate me, take it out on me. Why hurt Chloe? I really didn't. Horace looked at Chloe on the floor, opened his mouth as if to speak, then gave up. His expression went utterly despondent. Horace, have you tasted the feeling of being utterly unable to argue your case? I carried Chloe out. If anything happens to her, you'll go down with her. On the way to find a doctor. Chloe, weak, probed hesitantly. Horace, when did you get here? I suddenly wanted to see our daughter. I came over just now and saw you fall. Oh, she breathed a sigh of relief and the corner of her mouth lifted in satisfaction. Don't get cocky. Chloe, your turn will come soon enough. Chapter 11. Chloe only suffered a minor injury. Nothing serious. But she insisted she had headaches and demanded to be hospitalized. I knew she was just pretending to be worse off, so I would dote on her more. I let her have her way. But after only one day, she checked herself out. When I asked her why, she replied uneasily, home is more comfortable. But I knew the real reason, the night she was hospitalized. Yoshino went to see her. At first, she only wanted to make a small sacrifice for the sake of our bright future. But what she didn't know was that Yoshino wasn't some Japanese executive at all. He was just a thug I hired for $1 million. After Chloe's injury, I never went to see Horace again. About a week later, under my instruction, he was discharged. Even though he returned home, he wasn't welcomed in the slightest. Mother Jean gave him cold looks. I treated him with sharp words. He became a thoroughly pitiful daughter-in-law. At first, I almost pitied him, but that night, he suddenly said to me, "Could you come with me to the burned-down building?" I understood at once. He had already recovered from the exhaustion of postpartum weakness. He wanted me to go to the fire-damaged building with him to test whether our bodies could be switched back. I could never so easily give up this body. You're mentally unstable right now. How could I dare let you out so casually? He grew anxious. I'm perfectly stable. I stared him down. Then tell me, do you still think you're not Ellie? He froze, then gritted his teeth and declared with determination, no, I am Ellie. I'm very clear on that now. I don't believe it. A normal Ellie wouldn't be like this. Then what was she like? I thought for a moment, then summoned the housemaid and signaled to her, tell him what she used to be like. The maid lowered her head cautiously and said, Madam used to be the most gentle and considerate wife. She would wake up at 5 in the morning to make a full breakfast for the whole family. At 7, she would help Madam Jean choose a dress and take her to her dance class. At 8, she would iron Master Jin's suit and send him off to work. At 8:30, she would help Mr. Jean dress, tidy his briefcase, and send him to the garage. At 9, she and I would wash all the household laundry and tidy all the rooms. At 10, she would plan the menu for lunch and dinner, then go grocery shopping, and pick up Madam Jean on the way home. He listened in a daze. Did Ellie really have to do so many things? What else? Marrying into a wealthy family with an ordinary background. I had no foothold except hard work. At the time I was immersed in it and even found it sweet. Looking back now, it was like being used as a beast of burden. I looked at Horace. Yes, the normal you was like that. He gritted his teeth. Fine, I'll prove to you I've recovered. That was an easy win for him. Lately his father hasn't been home, so there's been much less housework. Still, I breathed a little easier. It seemed Horace had recovered his wits, but not completely. I had to take advantage of this window to get everything in order and leave myself an escape route. After thinking it over, I drew up a divorce agreement that split half of Horace's assets into my name. I just needed to find an opportunity to force him to sign. The next morning at 5 I heard Horace getting up, led by the maid. He fumbled awkwardly through breakfast preparations. After a while the baby began to cry, and he had to rush to check on her. I slept blissfully until 8, went downstairs, and had him warm my breakfast, press my suit, and see me out the door. That day I spent a lot of time finalizing the divorce agreement and dividing assets, and didn't get home until 10 at night. I opened the door. The first-floor living room was dim and lifeless. Moonlight fell from high above by the floor-to-ceiling windows. Someone sat all alone. For a moment I almost thought the house was haunted. You're back. His voice was weak, as if his life force had been drained. Just one day and my life had turned into this? What's wrong with you? I asked. He sat quietly, staring at the ceiling with hollow eyes. I used to think Ellie lived an easy life as a rich wife. Today I realized how hard she worked. He'd forgotten he was supposed to be Ellie, but I wanted to hear him out, so I didn't interrupt. He sighed, and there were tears in his eyes. I've wronged her. Now that I've stepped into her life, I've truly felt her suffering. Ellie, I regret it, but where are you? Is she dead? Could it be that she gave up her chance to live because she loved me? Any feeling I'd had of being moved vanished immediately. Man, why would you assume I loved you that much? I went to him and worriedly stroked his head. Ellie, you're talking nonsense again. He forced a smile and wiped his tears away. Oh, sorry. He sobbed a little, then pulled himself together. I'm just exhausted. Tomorrow I'll behave properly. I watched him silently and shook my head. Don't push it. Don't wreck this body. No need. Ellie, you don't have to do those things anymore. I can take you to the site of the fire, as long as you sign this divorce agreement. I took the agreement from my bag and put it on his knee. My assets will be split halfway with you. We'll raise the child together. I will marry Chloe. He froze. I just gave you a child and you want a divorce? Are you fair to me? After saying that he paused, then muttered, forget it. Who are you fair to, anyway? He lowered his head, picked up the divorce papers, and beneath the moonlight, though it was hard to see, he took the pen. After a long time, he signed, imitating my handwriting. Ellie, I'll let you go. I took the papers and looked them over. I was surprised. His imitation of my handwriting was that convincing. I smiled a little, feeling a measure of relief. Perhaps I wasn't entirely just a shadow after all. Chapter 12. The next day I and Horace went to register the divorce. As promised, I took him to the site of the fire. The exterior was cordoned off and guarded. We couldn't get up to the floors where we had originally fainted. I sighed with disappointment. I didn't expect it to be like this. I'll think of another way. Maybe I can sneak up there later. He nodded. Disappointed. There's nothing else we can do. I had a vague feeling the time to switch back was drawing nearer. I had to hurry. That night I went to Horace and Chloe's love nest. It was the first time in many days that I'd gone to see her on my own initiative. She was happy, dressed up exquisitely in a pure white dress, waiting for me downstairs from afar. A light rain fell. She looked like a lily. I sat in the car, took out the wine I'd prepared, took 2 sips and splashed some on myself. Then I staggered slightly and walked toward her. Horace. She looked at me and smiled sweetly. I knew the outcome hinged on this moment. There's only one way to crush a woman consumed by love, shatter her love, turn her intense devotion into a blade and drive it straight into her heart. I approached, touched her face, and, feigning dizziness, called out, "Ellie, you're back." In that instant I clearly saw Chloe's smile freeze. I held her and murmured, "Ellie, you look so beautiful today. You haven't come to pick me up in so long. Are you still angry with me?" Chloe trembled and asked, "What's your name?" "Ellie, what's wrong? Look closely and see who I am." Chloe grabbed my collar like a madwoman and forced me to look. I'm Chloe. Horace. How can you call her by that name? You clearly love me the most." "What?" I squinted, swayed, and pretended I wanted to embrace her. "Are you angry? Are you mad that I'm with Chloe?" "Don't be angry, okay? How could I love her? What I had with her was just for show. I wouldn't marry her. I only used her to please Yoshino so he'd give me bridge funding." Chloe collapsed. What did you say?" "Ellie, do you think I was wrong? But without doing that, my company would die. How am I supposed to give you and the baby a good life? Don't blame me, okay, wife?" A heavy shove sent me sprawling to the ground. I sat there, looking up at her in bewilderment. She wept like rain, her face contorted. "How could you do this to me, Horace? How could you change your heart? I love you so much. I only came to see you after finally getting a divorce. I've borne the insults for you. How could you deceive me? I almost died for you. Don't you know how perverted Yoshino is? I became his girlfriend to please him. I've been constantly disgusted and nauseous. This was all your deception. You lied to me. You lied to me." She cried and screamed, then ran out. Her white dress fluttered in the drizzle, fragile and beautiful like a little lily. With a sudden, crashing impact, she actually flew up into the air. Chapter 13. The next day, when we returned home, I immediately felt that something was wrong. Horace's father had come back from overseas. This man was a lot sharper than Horace. I could fool Horace and fool Mother Jean, but I wasn't confident I could fool him. "Horace, come have breakfast." His calm voice made the hairs on my arms stand up. Mrs. Jean and Horace were already seated. The 3 of them all looked toward me. I sat down and did my best to cope, eating that meal as if walking on thin ice. At 9 o'clock I used the excuse of taking a phone call and slipped out the back door. I had already packed and was ready to run at any moment to handle whatever emergency happened. I got in the car and headed for the hotel where I'd left my luggage. As for the child, she belonged to the Jean family now. They wouldn't hurt her. When the car reached the gated villa entrance, a black car suddenly swept out and slammed hard into mine. The airbags deployed instantly, but I was still knocked unconscious. Damn, I couldn't get away. When I woke up, of course I was already under their control. Horace and Mr. Jean stood before me, calmly watching. When Mr. Jean saw me slowly open my eyes, his smile was all teeth. "How do you feel, Ellie?" It looked like he'd already recognized me and that the breakfast earlier had exposed my identity. No, I couldn't admit it. If I acknowledged I was Ellie, it would be over. I had to insist I was Horace. Only then would they hesitate to go too far and I might still have a chance to escape. I forced my voice, "Father." "Ellie, what happened?" Mr. Jean sneered. "Ellie, you can fool everyone, but you can't fool me. Tell me, what dark trick did you use to swap bodies with my son?" "Swap bodies? I don't understand, Ellie," Horace hissed, staring at me with clenched teeth. "Are you still going to pretend? A few days ago I was weak and you played me for a fool. Now you can't run." "Dad, stop lecturing her, just take us to the building and see if we can switch back." Mr. Jean nodded. Fine. Exhausted and weak, they hauled me along and forcibly dragged me to the site of the fire. The place was a wreck. Horace excitedly had us placed where we'd passed out before. We waited a long time, but nothing happened. How could this be? He said, frustrated. Then, in a burst of anger, he grabbed my throat. How did you do the switch? Tell me. How would I know? Was divine punishment something I could control? I shook my head. I don't understand what you're saying. Horace nearly choked with rage. Mr. Jean watched us coolly for a while, then suddenly smiled. If you don't speak, I have ways to make you. But when that time comes, don't say you weren't warned. His smile was sinister enough to give me goosebumps. Still, I was sure this was his son's body. However angry he got, he wouldn't destroy it. I shook my head again. I don't know what to say. Father, I am Horace, I'm your son. He snorted. Then let's go. Chapter 14. I suspected things weren't simple, but I didn't expect they'd bring me here. Twin Islands Psychiatric Hospital. It was owned by the Jean family. A hospital on a desolate little island. Only then did a real fear creep up on me. Would they do what movies do, lock me up with a bunch of lunatics to break my mental defenses? Not until they led me down an elevator into the basement did I realize it was far worse. On the surface it looked like a psychiatric hospital, but in reality they were conducting inhumane live experiments. I walked down a long corridor, staring at the glass rooms on either side. The people inside writhed in pain and held without end. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. Ellie, I told you, I have ways to make you speak. They stopped. They dragged me alone into a glass room, bound my arms and legs with straps. I yelled, "What are you doing?" Mr. Jean stood outside and smiled. Don't worry, this is my son's body. I won't destroy it. A nurse walked toward me holding a syringe. Horace explained from the side. It's a neurotoxin. It won't damage the body, but the pain is unbearable, 10 times worse than childbirth. Ellie, if you don't want to suffer, speak now. What could I possibly say? I don't know, I shouted. Mr. Jean shook his head. Stubborn. Inject. A thin needle stabbed into my shoulder. That was it. I closed my eyes in despair, bracing for the imagined agony. It never came. I snapped my eyes open. I was standing outside the glass room, and Horace was tied to the bed inside, shock on his face. I looked down at my body. It had switched back. Inside the glass room, the real Horace froze for a moment, then immediately howled in pain. Dad, I'm Horace. I'm Horace. Pain stole his voice. Seconds later, he trembled and passed out. Mr. Jean didn't notice anything odd. He shook his head, stubborn as ever. Wake him up. Give him another shot. Ha, another shot? Fine, give him another shot. I swallowed my excitement, clutched my lower abdomen and winced. Father, my wound hurts. I need to rest a bit. He nodded. Go ahead. I'll stay here. I pressed my hand to my belly, feigned pain, and left the underground lab. Outside, I ran straight to the shore where several speedboats were moored. I boarded one, started it, and fled the island. While speeding away, I called the police. Yes, I want to report Twin Islands Psychiatric Hospital for conducting inhumane human experiments. After hanging up, I uploaded the video. On the way out, I'd secretly recorded evidence on my phone. As the speedboat neared the opposite shore, I heard pursuit behind me. Several speedboats were chasing. They'd discovered me, but at that moment police cars were gathering on the shore. You the caller? Yes, I am. Quick, get her into the car. A young officer came over, nervous, and helped me into the patrol car. That uniform, such a reassuring sight. Epilogue. The Jean family's psychiatric hospital was exposed, and the police arrived immediately to arrest every suspect involved. Both father and son from the Jean family were sent to prison. My daughter was returned to me. Chloe didn't die, but she lost both her legs. After Horace was imprisoned, she even went to visit him only to spit venom, cursing him bitterly. Horace, bewildered over crimes he hadn't committed, found that no matter how he explained, no one would ever believe him. From model sweethearts in college, they became mortal enemies, bound by hate. As for me, after that I nursed my body back to health and cared for my daughter. A year later, I married that same young and handsome police officer. The past was dark and irretrievable. My life, truly, only began at that moment. Story 2. I took 30 million to seduce the golden boy of the capital's elite and make him break his vows. The night I left a forged pregnancy report in his room. Then I got kidnapped and disappeared without a trace. The next time we met, the golden boy had become a powerful figure in the capital. He pointed a gun at my uncle's chin and asked, "Where is she?" Chapter 1. Miriam, your uncle is here again, my coworker whispered as she passed by. I frowned, picked up a tray of drinks, and headed over. The moment I reached the door, something felt off. It was too quiet. I pushed the door open a crack. The small private room was filled with men in black suits. My Uncle Ethan and his lackeys were huddled on the couch like scared little chickens, staring in terror at the dark figure standing with his back to them. I was about to step in to defuse the situation when I heard the chilling sound of a gun being cocked. The man turned around. A gun barrel was pressed to Ethan's chin. Where is she? Chapter 2. My heart almost stopped for a few seconds. Fragments of memories flashed before my eyes. A gentle boy in the lush mountains, releasing a bird with a soft smile. A serene boy under the dim candlelight, quietly copying scriptures. A fragile boy in a torrential downpour, his eyes swimming with suppressed desire. All those memories converged on the face before me, cold, stern, and filled with menace. Sam, I don't know this Celine you're talking about. I swear I've never even heard of her. This person doesn't exist. You could kill me, and I still couldn't hand her over. Ethan's voice trembled so much it could have rattled a sieve. My fingertips turned pale as I clutched the tray, keeping my head down as I prepared to slip away. Miriam, what are you standing there for? The manager suddenly appeared and pushed the door open. Hurry up, Anne. He froze mid-sentence as he took in the scene inside the room. Sorry for the interruption, he said hastily, pulling me back. I wanted to bury my head in the tray and get out of there as quickly as possible. Stop. Sam's voice rang out, directing itself at me. You, turn around. Chapter 3. Sam, she's just a new hire and doesn't know any better. The manager quickly interjected. Please, don't hold it against her. I'll personally bring you the drinks. He took the tray from my hands, giving me a hard nudge with his elbow. I handed over the tray and bolted. It wasn't until I reached the main hall that I finally exhaled in relief. The news of Sam's visit had already spread. Can you believe it? Young Master Sam came to a place like this. Is he looking for a girl? TSK. The golden boy stepping off his pedestal. 3 years ago, he was still at the temple, and wouldn't even touch meat or alcohol. Didn't he just get engaged? Won't Miss Lisa throw a fit? Throw a fit? Over what? Sam's family has connections on both sides of the law. The man alone is practically half the capital's power. If he wants to have fun, who's going to stop him? Does she even have the right to complain? I ignored the gossip, huddled under the bar, and frantically sent a message. What the hell is going on? He's here looking for me. Chapter 4. As the crowd said, 3 years ago, Sam was like a devoted monk, untouched by worldly desires. He wanted no family inheritance, no relatives, and chose to live a secluded life in the monastery. Back then, using the name Celine, I committed a grave sin. I used every possible means to pull that pure young man into the mundane world. When he finally gave up his convictions, deciding to live an ordinary life with me, I followed the plan, giving him the final blow. During those days, he even purchased property abroad, just waiting for the visa to come through so he could take me away. The night before we were supposed to leave the mountains, he went to copy one last scripture. I kissed his eyes and said cheerfully, "When you come back, I have a surprise for you." Then, I did 3 things. I placed a fake pregnancy report under his pillow. I left a ransom letter in my room, supposedly from kidnappers, and I sent a voice message to his phone, my voice hoarse from pretend tears. Sam, save me! Then I disappeared without a trace. Of course, all of this was fake. My encounter with him was fake. My feelings for him were fake. The pregnancy was fake. And being kidnapped was fake. Sam's family wanted their eldest son to return and take up responsibilities. and I wanted the 30 million yuan his family promised. Chapter 5. Miriam. I'm sorry. I didn't know your uncle had crossed the wrong people this time. My colleague, who had just tipped me off, came to apologize. I just saw the manager come out of the office. His face was pale. Are you okay? I shook my head and continued my work, but when my shift ended, I deliberately lingered. I was the last one to leave the bar. Sure enough, a Maybach was waiting outside. Sam's profile was reflected in the car window, as cold and distant as an urban myth hidden in the city. My fingernails dug into my palms, and I took a deep breath before obediently getting into the car. The familiar scent of sandalwood filled the air, but Sam was no longer the Sam I knew. He was the distinguished superior. From the strands of his hair to his fingernails, he exuded an aura of absolute authority. He leaned against the seat, studying me inch by inch. He said nothing. I was already prepared, so I spoke up first. Mr. Sam, you have the wrong person. As soon as I spoke, a dark glint flashed in Sam's eyes. Celine is my sister, I said, pulling out my wallet and extracting a photo. It was a photo of me and Celine. Though we're identical twins, there are still slight differences between us. I looked up, revealing my clear eyes. My sister once told me that you liked the teardrop mole beneath her eye the most. Chapter 6. From the beginning, I approached Sam under the identity of Celine, because she and Sam had a brief connection during their student days. Before Sam went to the mountains for seclusion, the only thing he instructed the butler to do was to send a box of books to Celine. His family believed that Sam had special feelings for Celine. Using her identity had a better chance of success. Before approaching Sam, I specifically trained my voice. From the first sentence I spoke to him, I didn't use my own voice. I also practiced countless times drawing the teardrop mole at the corner of her eye. I made sure I could draw that spot in the same place every day. Sam's hand gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles defined, veins bulging. What about her? Naturally, he was asking about Celine. I lowered my gaze, dead. The pressure in the car dropped rapidly. Before I could lift my eyes, something cold was already pressed against my forehead. Say that again. Chapter 7. It is said that now, in Beijing circles, the name Sam instills fear. The monk has shed his pure and detached exterior, becoming ruthless and decisive. My palms were almost pierced by my own nails, my voice trembling slightly. Haven't you investigated? After you paid the ransom, my sister was diagnosed with cancer and went abroad. In less than a year, she died in San Francisco. I pulled out my phone. I still have her death certificate on my phone. Do you want to see it, sir? The air fell silent. The coldness in Sam's hand softened a bit. Lift your head. Look at me. My eyelids trembled slightly. I lifted my gaze, meeting his dark eyes. Sam also looked into my eyes. His expression grew colder inch by inch. Get out. I felt as if I had been granted a reprieve. Chapter 8. Back home. I drank 2 large glasses of water to calm myself. The first thing I did was search for recent international flights. Amanda's call came just as I had closed the page. Miriam, did he really come looking for you? What now? You should run. Your visa. I'm not running. I tossed the passport aside. Running now would only raise his suspicions. Then, he can't find out. The plan back then was perfect. With Sam's family backing me and Celine's cooperation, he could only find out that everything I said was true. Besides, Celine really did die in San Francisco. I didn't lie to him. So what are you going to do next? Sam these years, he's a bit crazy. I always feel like he won't give up that easily. I'll do what I have to do, as long as I don't admit it. Who can say that I was the one back then? I'll continue as usual, working at an advertising agency by day, bartending at night. I've always been short on money, very short. Sam, as expected, didn't give up easily. Almost every day, that Maybach followed me. I didn't need to put much effort into dealing with him. When I was with him, my name wasn't mine, my voice wasn't mine, and my personality wasn't mine. He likes girls who are soft and fragrant like jasmine. When they smile, they seem to carry the light of the world. That was Celine, not me. Chapter 9. In at most a month, he'll lose interest in me. I told Amanda. Sam isn't someone who only cares about appearances. Only I know how much effort it took to bring him down back then. Once he realizes that the soul beneath this shell isn't the one he loves, he'll treat me like a stranger. In reality, it took just half a month before that Maybach stopped following me. I let out a long sigh of relief. Life returned to normal. The next time I saw Sam was again at the bar. That night, there was a troublesome customer. Usually, if something was even slightly off, the manager would step in to handle it. But that day, he was on leave. Just as the customer's hand was about to touch the back of my hand, he was kicked to the ground. In the blink of an eye, he was dragged out by two men in black suits. The noise of the bar couldn't cover his screams. The remaining two men reached out to me. Miss Miriam, please. Chapter 10. Sam sat on the wide sofa, his shirt buttoned up to his neck, cufflinks perfectly in place. Moonlight poured down. He looked as pure as an untouchable deity. I kept my head down, knowing what had displeased him. He probably couldn't allow the face of the person he once loved to mix with the vulgarity of such a place. Are you short on money? Sam picked up a glass of wine. In the past, he never touched alcohol. I lowered my gaze. You must have already investigated me, sir, and know my situation. Celine and I are identical twins, but we didn't grow up together. I got lost when I was very young. My mother worried herself sick and passed away early. My father carried the burden alone for 10 years but didn't live to see me found. I have no family and no proper education. Trying to survive in the city isn't easy. Sam looked at me, his gaze deep. I met his eyes calmly. He should be able to clearly see the difference between me and Celine by now. Celine received a good education. My parents gave her all the love they would have given me as well. They raised her to be gentle, kind, bright, and pure. He doesn't know how hard I worked to pretend to be her. Those books he sent her, I studied them for 3 months just to barely grasp the basics. The letters he wrote to her, I had to go through them sentence by sentence with reference materials to fully understand them. If it bothers you, sir, I'll find another job. The truth is, the manager here is very good, and my colleagues get along well. I'm not that willing to quit, but I also don't want to keep getting entangled with Sam. Sam didn't reply, perhaps because he had just had a glass of wine. His gaze was a little hazy. The corners of his eyes had a touch of red. Suddenly, I remembered our first time. He looked just like this. His usually clear eyes now deep and wavering, struggling between emotions. I gently touched the corner of his eyes. An intense shade of red, followed by an overwhelming wave of heat. My heart started to race inexplicably, and I stood up. I turned to leave. 300,000. Sam suddenly spoke. I stopped. Aren't you short on money? Sam continued. Pretend to be Celine. 300,000 a month. I frowned and walked quickly towards the door. 3 million. My steps quickened. 30 million. I couldn't move any further. The room was too quiet. The sound of Sam setting down his glass was crystal clear. Then, the rustling of clothes. I turned around. He had already unbuttoned his collar and set his watch aside. Come here. He leaned back on the sofa, from his throat to his chest. Decadent and enticing. Kiss me. Chapter 11. The lighting in the private room was already dim. Sam only turned on a very faint little lamp. Blending with the moonlight, it suddenly became a color that was extremely suggestive. I sat by his side. My heart was pounding irregularly. He seemed determined not to move, so I had to lean in. Just a kiss. We've done this countless times before. I could almost remember the curve of the muscles under his shirt, the warmth of his skin. My sweaty hand grabbed his collar, and he leaned down, his gaze falling on my face. Familiar, yet strange. Our breaths mingled, and he held my waist. The heat from his palm almost burned the air between us. I moved a little closer. In his eyes, I could see my reflection clearly, equally familiar, equally strange. Sorry. I turned my face away. Give me some time to prepare. Sam almost immediately pushed me away. He stood up abruptly and left in large strides. Chapter 12. I became Celine again. Even though I wasn't as obedient, Sam still transferred 30 million to me that night. The next day, I moved out of the rundown rental apartment and rented a place near Sam's family group headquarters. However, Sam wasn't satisfied with that apartment. He directly took me to his villa. Sir, keeping a canary at home isn't appropriate. Is it? I sat in the car, reluctant to go in. Sam turned his head. She even calls me Sam. I froze. Sam stared at me for a few seconds, then got out of the car on his own. I had no choice but to follow. There was only one maid in the villa, and she was extremely surprised to see me, standing there with her mouth open for a long moment without making a sound. Miss Miriam. Sam dropped those words and went upstairs with the suitcase. Unlike the maid's astonishment, the room looked as if it had been prepared long ago. I felt a pang of emotion just looking at it. From when I deliberately approached Sam to when I finally left. It had been over a year. We had a lot of memories together. The house we built with branches. The star lamps we made from grass vines. The tea set we molded from clay. Even the leaves we picked up in the mountains. He had brought them all into the room. I quickly averted my eyes. Is this Mr. Miriam's room? Sam didn't respond, only pushed the suitcase into the closet. You can't expect a benefactor to fawn over a canary. I didn't mind his attitude and quietly took my clothes to the bathroom. Before leaving, I hesitated for a long time but ended up drawing that teardrop mole at the corner of my eye. However, Sam was no longer in the room. I checked my phone, and he had sent me a message. Something came up. Go to sleep first. I let out a sigh of relief. Just like that day at the bar. I couldn't bring myself to kiss him no matter what. Perhaps I wasn't ready to have an intimate relationship with Sam under the identity of Miriam. All night, Sam didn't come, but I still didn't sleep well. At 3 in the morning, I woke up once. I got up and turned on that star lamp. I still remember making it because Sam said the stars on the mountaintop were beautiful. So I wove it for him. I specifically chose thorny vines and then, in front of him, accidentally showed my hands covered in wounds. As expected, he couldn't just sit by, frowned, and started weaving it with me. It was also under this light that I kissed him for the first time. How envious. Sam treasures those things so much, things that are related to me, but, at the same time, it has nothing to do with me. In reality, I had long been used to doing hard labor. My hands were not that delicate. To avoid revealing any inconsistencies, before going up the mountain, I specifically did months of care. Now, they have returned to their original state. I simply borrowed a part of Celine's life. Chapter 13. Being Sam's canary is actually quite easy. Aside from quitting my part-time job at the bar and moving into his house, my life hasn't changed much. Sam doesn't stay in the same room as me. It seems that he's always been disciplined, knowing that I'm not the real person. He never intended to develop a further relationship with me. I tried drawing the teardrop mole a few times, but he didn't seem to care much. So, I stopped drawing it. Every day, I just eat meals with him, and when he works, I sit by and read books. He even drives me to and from work. There's hardly a better job than this, except for the occasional times when I find him sitting by my bed in the middle of the night, giving me a bit of a scare. Maybe I resemble Celine more when I'm asleep, so he chooses to come at night to see my face and think of her? Besides that, Amanda was right. His temper isn't exactly good nowadays. You could say it's unpredictable. Like now, he came during lunch to take me out to eat. I ordered according to Celine's preferences, and suddenly he wasn't happy. I asked what you wanted to eat. He emphasized the word you. His expression turned cold, and the waiter beside us was so frightened that they didn't dare to breathe. I had no choice but to be honest. I rarely come to places like this. Sam froze. His lips moved, and his expression grew even darker. He threw down the menu and left. I looked at the cold, empty seat across from me and took out my phone. I counted the digits in my bank account balance, and my mood immediately brightened. I dutifully sent him a message. I'm sorry. If I did something wrong, please let me know. I'll be more careful next time. As a result, he seemed even angrier. He didn't come to pick me up after work that night. Chapter 14. I wasn't sure if Sam was still angry or if he was away on a business trip. Morning and night, I didn't see any trace of him. One night, half asleep, I felt someone gritting their teeth beside my ear. Where's your 30 million? If it wasn't enough, why didn't you ask for more back then? I opened my eyes, and the room was empty. It was probably just a dream. With Sam gone, there was still a driver to pick me up every day. But that didn't stop those who wanted to see me from finding a way to do so. During lunch break that day, my boss nervously came over to my desk, said someone was looking for me outside. I went out and saw a familiar face. Chapter 15. The Old Sam Family Residence. After several years, Sam's grandpa was still in good spirits. He sat at the tea table and personally poured me a cup of tea, smiling. Miss Miriam, what does this mean? I knew I couldn't hide it from him. I didn't touch the tea. I took the money, so I must do the job. I said softly, Sir, it's the same story as 3 years ago. Only now, the employer has become Mr. Sam. You know me. I'm someone who is motivated by money. Even if Mr. Sam is holding a gun to my head now. No one forced me back then. I would have done anything for 30 million, wouldn't I? Chapter 16. Actually, the Sam family didn't come to me first. The real Celine was their first choice. At that time, my father had been dead for 2 years, and our family was deep in debt. Sam's grandpa offered Celine a deal, pay off her family's debts, plus 3 million. Celine didn't even hesitate and refused immediately. You are toying with people's emotions. I would rather die than do something like this. I thought she was crazy. Is love more important than life? We had just reconnected as sisters, and we almost had a falling out over this. She tried to persuade me earnestly. Miriam, as a person, you must understand propriety, justice, integrity, and honor. These are things Mom never got the chance to teach you. Dad never got the chance to teach you. So your sister will teach you. I didn't listen. 3 million, enough to feed countless homeless children for years. If you won't go, I will. I went to see Sam's grandpa. Stubbornly, my sister's health isn't good. 30 million. I'll go instead of her. Then I pressured Celine. I've already signed the agreement. And you know the Sam family has power everywhere. If you don't help me, just pretend you never found this sister of yours. If I end up underground, I won't blame you in front of Mom and Dad. Chapter 17. Maybe I really don't understand propriety, justice, integrity, and honor. I didn't think it was such a shameful thing. On the contrary, when I first approached Sam, I felt a kind of resentment. Young, a prestigious graduate, leaving a huge family business unattended, letting distant relatives turn the company into a mess, and running off to these deep mountains to practice Buddhism? Ridiculous. Sam's grandpa is getting on in years. He won't live much longer. Sam's grandpa still smiled as he took a sip of tea. Miss Miriam is a smart person. You know what I'm worried about. I lowered my eyes and smiled slightly as well. Don't worry. I won't let Mr. Sam find out that I was the one from back then, and he won't fall out with you because of it. The only promise I made to Mr. Sam was to stop this improper relationship before his marriage. I pressed my lips together. It won't affect his marriage to Lisa. The marriage between the two families was all the rage. There had already been rumors that they were actually engaged. Sam's grandpa paused, his hand holding the teacup, and looked at me. He seemed to want to see through the truth in my words. I smiled even more faintly. Sir, I know my place. I'm not worthy of Mr. Sam. I can't enter your family's door. I'm very clear on that. Someone suitable for Sam, even if not a wealthy heiress like Lisa, should be a modest and like-minded girl like Celine. I'm not worthy. Chapter 18. Coming out of the old Sam family residence. I wasn't particularly happy. It was only after I went to the bank and transferred some money out that I felt cheerful again. Just as I stepped out of the bank, Ethan's call came through. My dear, where did you get all that money again? Be honest. You really haven't done anything illegal, have you? I said no. He still went on and on. Did you forget the lesson from last time? I still don't know what you were doing for over a year. You made money, but when you came back, you were sick for half a year. You can't choose money over your life. Miriam, are you listening to your uncle? I'm listening. I I replied as I took a cab to the company. It's just a few more months. Enjoy it while it lasts. That night, Sam came back. Chapter 19. He came back very late. I was already half asleep when I heard noises downstairs. He must have been on a business trip. I heard the sound of his suitcase. After dozing off again for a while, I realized he had entered the room. I thought he would just look around like always and then leave. To my surprise, he lifted the blanket and lay down. My back instinctively tensed. I won't touch you. His voice was a bit hoarse, sounding very tired. Actually, I wasn't nervous about his proximity. On the contrary, the scent of sandalwood on him made me feel at ease. It's just, did you go to the old residence today? What did he say? Just warned me not to have unrealistic expectations. Ignore him. Oh, as if I could even afford unrealistic expectations. I turned over and went back to sleep. Sam spoke again. Why did you give Ethan so much money? I froze. He explained. The people keeping an eye on Ethan forgot to withdraw. Couldn't you find out? I want to hear it from you. Oh, it wasn't really a secret. You know, I grew up in an orphanage. The family that bought me eventually had their own child, so they left me at the orphanage door. I want to invest in orphanages, welfare homes, things like that. Sam was silent for a moment. He can't handle that much money. I also fell silent. I knew that. Of course. Back then, the 30 million, some was spent on Celine's treatment. The rest was invested in the orphanage. But we weren't good at management, nor at making the money grow. The orphanage only had expenses and no income. And the money was spent quickly. Quit your job. I'll find a professional manager to guide you. I instantly perked up. Really? Chapter 20. Sam and I clearly hadn't had a fight, but it also felt like we had fought and then made up. And we quickly found a new way to get along. He really did find an incredibly capable manager for us. I stopped working, so he no longer drove me to and from work. Instead, he gave me his evenings. It's kind of strange, to be honest. Other people's canaries live extravagant, indulgent lives with their benefactors. But I study with my benefactor. During the day, the manager trains me. And in the evenings, the business genius tutors me personally. It feels like I'm getting a dual MBA. And I'm improving rapidly. After that night, Sam moved into my room. But nothing happened between us. Which, honestly, makes sense. The intimidating big shot is, at his core, still a monk with no desires. The relationship between us somehow became much more comfortable. I didn't have the energy to go out of my way to please him. And he, in turn, stopped being moody. He actually seemed to enjoy tutoring me. 30 million a month to support a student? Impressive. The only problem is, I quite enjoy his tutoring too. The way he analyzes problems is really attractive. Even more attractive than when he used to copy scriptures back then. Those deep eyes, like a pool of water, as if they could drown you. Luckily, every time I got lost in thought, he'd snap me back to reality with a light slap. He's really a strict benefactor. Busy days always pass quickly. As work was coming to an end today, I received a message from Sam. Come home early tonight. Chapter 21. My proper mentor is named Luis. In his 40s, exceptionally sharp. The moment he saw the smile on my face, he asked, Sam, go on. I'll take care of things here. Even though I felt a little embarrassed, I still left early. I thought Sam had something important to discuss, but it turned out he just wanted to take me out for dinner. He rarely took me to fancy restaurants anymore. Even when we went, he would thoughtfully order the food for me in advance. But this simple, affordable restaurant was an even rarer occasion. I mentioned this place to you before. Remember? When Sam and I talked about the orphanage, we couldn't help but mention the old days. Back then, a group of kids would cling to the fence, eagerly looking at the world outside. The occasional smell of delicious food was the most tempting dream in those days. After dinner, Sam took me out for cake. Happy birthday. He lit a birthday candle for me. The birthday cake had Miriam written on it. After finishing the cake, he took me to the mountaintop, asking me to make a wish when a shooting star passed by. Then he took me to set off fireworks. In the pitch-black night, Fireworks burst into blossoms. I had never been this happy. I had never celebrated a birthday like this. I used to not even know when my birthday was. The only time I celebrated my actual birthday was deep in the mountains. Back then, it was just to make my presence known in front of Sam, and the cake even had Celine written on it. Sam held my hand the whole time. When the early autumn night breeze blew in, he suddenly pulled me into his arms. Miriam. The fireworks illuminated the side of his face. At some point, he had become more and more gentle, more and more captivating. Kiss me. I looked at his lips. So close. Half a year ago, in the private room at the bar, I knew very clearly that I was Miriam. Miriam had nothing to do with Sam. But now, I looked at those lips, and with almost no hesitation, I kissed him. Sam trembled slightly, holding my face. He kissed me back even more passionately. Chapter 22. I think I'm in love. I can't help wanting to be with Sam all the time, kissing him and never wanting to let go. I don't want to think about whether, in Sam's eyes, I'm Celine or Miriam. After all, the name on that cake was Miriam, right? September arrived in no time. This is an important month for me. Some of the orphanages I invested in before were purchased and then restructured. This month, the orphanage I personally built is about to be unveiled. I specifically chose the Mid-Autumn Festival for the unveiling, a day for family reunions, to give the children a home. As I was leaving, Sam held me at the entryway and kissed me for a long time. Are you sure you don't want me to go? My breath was a bit ragged, and I just shook my head. We've been seen together a lot lately, and the media almost caught on. Then dinner together tonight? One more kiss? By the time I got in the car, my cheeks were flushed red. It took a long time for the cool breeze to calm me down. The unveiling ceremony went smoothly, though it rained for a while. It quickly stopped. There was even a rainbow in the sky, a very good omen. At the end, I was supposed to have a meal with everyone, but someone came looking for me. Chapter 23. I knew why Sam's grandpa was looking for me again. Sam and Lisa's marriage talks had fallen through. After that, Sam's grandpa arranged for Sam to meet several other young ladies, but he refused them all. This wasn't something I could control. I walked into the old Sam family residence calmly, but I forgot that Sam's grandpa had held the reins of the family for decades, and even today, he hadn't fully handed over power to Sam. How could he be an easy person to deal with? When I came out of the old residence, my whole body was trembling. Sam's grandpa's smiling voice echoed in my ears. Miss Miriam, now that you have both love and career success, you should indeed be happy. You're young, and it's hard to resist temptation. I understand, but you shouldn't forget why you insisted on personally throwing money into that bottomless pit of an orphanage without expecting anything in return. My hands trembled as I opened my phone. I wanted to press delete, but it was a video sent from the other side. There was no way to delete it. I tried to delete the chat history. Instead, I accidentally touched the play button. The sharp cries of a young girl and a man's reckless laughter suddenly filled my ears. I frantically pressed the phone to stop it, unable to control myself. I squatted down, tears falling in big drops. It was nothing more than a beautiful dream. I'm not Celine, no matter how much I wish. I'm not the child who was never abducted. Chapter 24. I tried hard to tell myself it didn't matter. It was all in the past. It wasn't my fault. I had listened to Sam recite many Buddhist scriptures. I had copied many of those scriptures with him. Every word spoke of letting go. When Sam asked me what Sam's grandpa wanted with me again, I could still pretend nothing was wrong and say the usual stuff. I still read books beside him, asking him about things I didn't understand. I still went out early and returned late, joking and laughing with him. I still kissed him passionately, but I knew I couldn't let go. My nerves were constantly on edge. I was afraid of Sam's phone ringing, afraid of him having to return to the old residence, afraid of him even looking at his phone. Finally, one day, when he picked up his phone like any other time to check a message, as soon as I saw him frown, I instinctively rushed forward and knocked the phone out of his hand. The screen shattered into pieces on the floor. Just like my fragile sense of dignity, I knew it was time for my dream to end. Chapter 25. I called Sam's grandpa, handed over my documents and let his people handle my visa. I made excuses that I wanted to take a break and temporarily handed over the orphanage I had been managing. Then I arranged a few more meals with Amanda. I didn't even tell Amanda. As for Sam, I had long been used to acting in front of him. Pretending everything was fine wasn't hard. On the day I left the bank card and password in the room. There was still half of the balance left. The remaining half could be considered his donation to the children. I packed up all my things, restoring the room to its original state. There wasn't much else. Oh, I took my notes from these days, and the sketches he drew for me, as I went downstairs. The maid watched me carry my suitcase down step by step. She had been with the Sam family for many years. Seeing her calm gaze, I suddenly realized she was one of Sam's grandpa's people. Fine. I didn't need to explain anything to her. But just as I reached the door, she suddenly called out to me, "Miss Miriam, could I talk to you for a moment?" Chapter 26. She rarely spoke. Most of the time, she just did her work quietly. After I sat down, she seemed a bit nervous too. "Miss Miriam, do you know why Mr. Sam went up the mountain to practice?" I shook my head. Sam's grandpa hadn't told me much. In the beginning, I even mocked him for being crazy. The maid nervously pinched her fingers and took a deep breath. And then, from her mouth, I heard a full-blown saga of a wealthy family's ethical drama. Chapter 27. As the eldest son and grandson of the family, Sam had been cherished and held in high regard from the moment he was born. He lived up to the expectations. In everything he did, he excelled beyond the ordinary. But his father was not the same. Indulgent and wayward. Ever since his mother married into the family, his father had never been without other women. When Sam was 7, his mother took him along to catch his father in bed with her younger sister. By the time Sam was 10, the whole family knew about his father playing games with 2 maids in the bedroom. When Sam was 15, his father had already stopped coming home. His mother never cried or made a scene. She focused on raising him and managing the household affairs. Everyone said the eldest son was frivolous and dissolute, while the eldest daughter-in-law was graceful and wise, an exemplar of nobility. But during a critical moment of family power transition, an uncle stepped forward, claiming that Sam was not truly the son of the main family line. Sam's mother firmly denied it, yet she also refused to take Sam for a paternity test. In the end, she used her death to make a statement. It was Sam who found her body. Bright red blood filled the entire bathtub, but Sam's father still took him for a paternity test. No one dared approach the council hall that night. All they heard was the eldest son's furious roar, "You are shameless." He entered the hall upright and left lying down. On the way to the hospital, he passed away. That night in the council hall, there were only 3 people, the eldest son, Sam, and Sam's grandpa. After that, Sam left. He said he carried sin. Original sin. "Miss Miriam, you don't know what kind of life Mr. Sam had growing up." The maid wiped her tears as she spoke. There are no born prodigies. Such a young child. All he wanted was for his father to come home more often, to look at him and his mother even a little. But it ended up like this. And what fault did he have in it? She held my hand. "Miss Miriam, I know Sam's grandpa is driving you away, but in all these years, I've only seen Mr. Sam this happy recently. Mr. Sam searched the world for you for 3 years. I recognized you the moment you arrived. For 3 years. Mr. Sam drew a picture of you every day. You used to have a tear mole in the corner of your eye, right? A month before you returned. Mr. Sam, for some reason, lost his temper. He burned all those drawings, smashed more than half of the furniture in the house. Miss, I don't know what Sam's grandpa used to make you leave, but could you talk to Mr. Sam about it? His whole heart is filled with you." Chapter 28. I sat in the taxi, my mind in turmoil. At one moment, it was the maid's words. At another, it was Sam's grandpa's threats. I had clearly already made up my mind. I couldn't bear for Sam to see the ugliness of my past. I couldn't allow Sam's grandpa to take more extreme actions. I couldn't stay with Sam any longer. He was a pure, innocent monk. I had already pulled him into the mundane world, and I couldn't let him sink into the mire. After all, The person with the tear mole wasn't me. After all, the one he truly loved was Celine. If I left, he wouldn't be sad. But the maid was right. What did he do wrong? What did I do wrong? Why were we being dragged into this? Forced to bear the sins of adults? Was I leaving because I feared the video being exposed? Or was it because of the deep-rooted inferiority I felt? What else did the maid say? A month before you returned, Mr. Sam, for some reason, lost his temper. He burned all those drawings, smashed more than half of the furniture in the house. Why did he lose his temper? Why did he burn the drawings? For 3 years, Mr. Sam drew a picture of you every day. You used to have a tear mole in the corner of your eye, right? Because he realized he was drawing the wrong person? Because he realized, from beginning to end, it was me? Come here, kiss me, Miriam, kiss me. I asked what you wanted to eat. Where's the 30 million? Didn't you ask for enough back then? My scalp tingled. So, did Sam recognize me from the start? Did he never see me as Celine? Driver, please turn around. I'm not going to the airport. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone, just about to make a call when the screen lit up. Miriam, where are you trying to go again? Before I could speak, Sam's voice, filled with anger, came through. Miriam, you left me once, and now you want to leave me again. Is that it? Miriam, if you dare to leave, Ethan can say goodbye to his life. Sam, bang. Chapter 29. There's a car accident up ahead. Can't move. Young lady, there's nothing you can do, even if you're in a hurry. Could I borrow your phone, please? As soon as I said it, I realized I hadn't memorized Sam's number. The impact just now was too strong. My hands were sweaty, and my phone flew away and went black. I pressed my phone a few more times. Still no response. Sam isn't one to act rashly. I'll go back later and talk to him face to face. It will be the same. I tried to comfort myself, but the accident ahead seemed serious. With smoke and flames visible, I felt restless in the car. After a while, there was a commotion up front. I couldn't sit still any longer. I got out of the car, planning to walk around the scene, and then I saw a familiar figure ahead. I had never seen Sam look so panicked. He was always the calm one, but now, his entire face was ashen. It seemed like he couldn't see or hear anything. He was just fixated on the accident scene, trying to rush in, heedless of everything. People were trying to hold him back, but not many could stop him. When I disappeared suddenly back then, was he this desperate, this lost? Or even worse? Sam! I called out to him loudly. He looked over, his eyes instantly turning red. Chapter 30. The moment the door closed, Sam bit down forcefully. I shouldn't have been so gentle with you. I should have built a cage and locked you in. Running away again. Where are you planning to run this time? For how many years? He roughly tore my clothes. Not interested in people. Not interested in money either? Was it all an act? All these days? Was it all just an act? It's a pity you don't pursue acting as a career. He pulled his belt off and bound my hands. Don't forget, you still owe me a child. Weren't you pregnant? Where's the child? Just because I haven't touched you, you think you don't have to pay up? He pushed me down onto the bed, pressed his body against mine. I didn't really resist, but his movements still slowed down. He buried his head in the crook of my neck. His voice choked and hoarse. Miriam, what kind do you like? I can change. You can't just come into my life and then. I like you just the way you are. I cut him off. Sam paused, then grabbed my chin with a hateful grip, trying to fool me again. Suddenly, I wanted to cry. Why didn't you tell me you recognized me from the beginning? You were so cold-hearted. You only wanted money. If I told you, you'd just run away scared. Wouldn't you? Weren't you in love with Celine? I loved Celine when you were pretending to be Celine. Sam squeezed harder. I only exchanged a few letters with her. Miriam, do you think my love is that shallow? Was that really it? For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought I had no feelings for him. I thought he had always loved Celine. Both of us. caught in this uncertainty, guessing each other's feelings, approaching in the way we thought the other would accept. In the end, tears won. They flowed down my cheeks. The moon I thought was unattainable had already bent down for me. A small blade of grass. Sam looked away. I won't touch you. Don't cry. My hands hurt. He unbuckled his belt. I hugged him. Didn't I owe you a child? I kissed him. Let's have it. Chapter 31. Sam and I went back to the old residence. Sam went to see Sam's grandpa, and I waited outside. I don't know what they talked about. I only heard 3 gunshots. Scaring a flock of birds from a tree, Sam came out with a grim face, took my hand, and we left. After that, he took me to the prison, again. I didn't go inside. He came out with an air of blood about him. I didn't ask, but he understood the question in my eyes. Don't worry. For someone like him, beating him to death would be too merciful. Sam hired a lawyer and wanted to prosecute that person again. Somehow, Sam's grandpa had obtained those videos. 3 years ago, when we tried to accuse him, we couldn't find any evidence and could only send him to prison for financial issues. In less than half a month, a 15-year-old child abuse case went viral online. The perpetrator was the director of the orphanage. Using his position, he had abused nearly 100 children. The living conditions of marginalized groups in orphanages and welfare homes received attention. In this society, many people, institutions, and enterprises enjoy doing charity work, but you never know if, in the unseen dark corners, what grows is goodness or evil. Chapter 32. In the spring, Sam and I quietly registered our marriage. I took him to see my mom and dad, and we also went to visit Celine's grave. Actually, Celine's illness had shown signs before I went up the mountain, but at that time, the family had no backbone, and we were deep in debt, so she couldn't afford to take care of herself. I also took him to have dinner with Ethan and Amanda. Ethan was a security guard at the orphanage back then. He was the one who, after noticing something wrong, stood in front of me time and time again to protect me. He said he would be my uncle, so I took his last name. Amanda, on the other hand, was a close relative of Sam's family. Back then, she helped me devise various plans to conquer Sam. I never dared to let Sam know how well I knew her. Less than 3 months after getting married, I was really pregnant. Now I wasn't just the orphanage mom to the children. I was going to be a real mom. While setting up the nursery, I accidentally found the pregnancy report I had left all those years ago in Sam's room. The handwriting had long since faded, and the edges were worn, but it was still carefully placed in the top drawer of the nightstand. Like a treasure. That night, before going to sleep, I kissed him endlessly, softly whispered in his ear, apologizing, I'm sorry. I love you. Extra. Chapter 1. Sam noticed that lately, there seemed to be a young girl following him around. She looked somewhat familiar. It felt like he had seen her somewhere before, but he couldn't remember, and he didn't make an effort to recall. He had been living in the monastery, seeking peace, and didn't want to think too much about worldly matters anymore. Chapter 2. Until one day, he saw the girl asking a monk to write a prayer ribbon. Celine. She almost deliberately said the name louder. He remembered. In high school, there had been a junior who once wrote him letters, asking for study advice. He found her letters interesting, and they had exchanged a few. She had sent him a photo. The girl in front of him looked just like that photo. A tear mole at the corner of her eye, and the same name, Celine, but he didn't intend to pay her any attention. He had renounced his family, let alone a pen pal. Chapter 3. But she approached him. Sam, don't you remember me? He was about to say he didn't remember when her eyes reddened. I'm here to pray for my parents, and I'll be staying here for a while. He remembered her mother had passed away when she was young. Her father had died a couple of years ago. He nodded and walked around her. Chapter 4. She often appeared in front of him. It made him wonder if she had ulterior motives. But she didn't do anything inappropriate. She asked if he still had ink and paper, and that she could bring it for him when she went down the mountain. She asked if he had anything he wanted to eat. She was good at cooking and could make something for them to share. He refused each time, and she stopped offering. Chapter 5. This went on for 3 months. One day, she suddenly fell down the steps. He passed by. She accidentally fell into a puddle. He passed by. She carried 2 buckets of water in her hands. He passed by. One day, she accidentally scattered papers in front of him. He walked around the papers. That afternoon, he stumbled upon a strange sight. The usually gentle girl, who spoke so softly, was pointing at a scarecrow on the back hill, yelling, "I made it so obvious, and you still can't see it? Are you blind? What do you think this girl means? You really can't tell? The girl likes you. Look at you. Instead of living a good life, why did you come up to this mountain to seek some sort of retreat? Do you know how big your family's business is? Do you know that group of people is currently fighting amongst themselves? Do you know how many employees would lose their jobs if things went wrong? You studied so much, and yet you don't even have this basic sense of social responsibility? This isn't a retreat at all. It's just escape." At first, he found it funny, but as she went on, he couldn't laugh anymore. He even turned and walked away. He was running away. He couldn't believe a young girl had managed to hit his sore spot. Chapter 6. After that, he simply avoided her whenever he saw her. It seemed like she didn't notice his attitude. One evening, she knocked on his door again. "Today is my birthday. I don't want to eat cake alone. Would you join me?" Adding, "I made it myself, with no cream." And another, "After my dad passed away, I've been eating cake alone for 2 years." Seeing her slightly red eyes, he couldn't bring himself to refuse. While eating cake, she asked why he always went to the mountain top late at night. He casually replied that the stars were brighter at the top, which gave her another opportunity. She somehow found some thorny dry vines, sitting in front of his house. She said she wanted to make a string of star-shaped lights for him. "This way, you can always see the brightest stars." She spoke softly, but there was a mischievous glint in her eyes. Sure enough, halfway through making it, there was a constant ouch and ouch. Helpless, he could only sit down and help her. She tried to talk to him again. He kept silent. He didn't want to give her any more chances, but the last chance, he handed to her himself. Chapter 7. It was the day she came to hang the starlights. He happened to be copying scriptures. She instinctively stopped when she walked by. "Your calligraphy is so beautiful." She stood there watching him write. Her face was full of admiration. She even forgot she was supposed to hang the lights. "Do you want to learn?" She had been watching for quite a while, and he casually asked. Her face lit up immediately. "Would you teach me?" When someone truly loves something, their eyes do not lie. Faced with such sincere enthusiasm, he couldn't refuse. And just like that, he opened a small crack himself, a crack that allowed her into his life. By the time he realized it, she was everywhere, in his sight, in his heart.